Hey, sorry it's been a while. I had holidays and life is complicated, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and this isn't my full-time gig. What I'd like to talk about is strong leadership, especially in the US. When you're dealing with hostile nations, you can probably name them off the top of your head. The Russias, the Chinas, the Syrias of the world. It's important in the West to have strong leadership so that these hostile nations can expect retaliation for their aggressive actions. I'd like to start off with President Ronald Reagan and his face-off against Russia during the Cold War. This is obviously salient because of the contemporary situation with Russia and Ukraine, and could serve as a lodestar on how this kind of situation was handled successfully in the past. In the 1960s, during the Cold War, with Reagan as president, Russia was building up its nuclear armament. Instead of a slap on the wrist, the US in turn countered by building up their armament, leading to an arms race. An arms race is a scary concept, and a lot of people were opposed to Reagan's aggressive stance. As an example, Senator Edward Kennedy, who said, "We must stop the arms race before it stops us." Funnily enough, Joe Biden, who was a senator at the time, was one of the sponsors of a bill to freeze American military spending. In the end, Reagan's stance was exonerated. The Soviet Union couldn't keep up with the US's formidable military spending. Reagan himself said that the Soviet economic tailspin would force Mikhail Gorbachev to come around to an arms reduction agreement that both could live with. Against Russia's provocations, Ronald Reagan didn't flinch, and he maintained a tough demeanor. Let's turn to a president who didn't do that, Barack Obama. Barack Obama's infamous thin red line made America look weak with regards to Syria. Syria was one of the countries impacted by the Arab Spring as protests erupted against the Assad regime. In response to the cruelties against these protests, Obama issued a red line saying that the Assad regime could not use chemical weapons. Once evidence emerged from France that Assad had in fact crossed this red line, the Obama administration did nothing. Assad called Obama's bluff, and since America didn't fall through on its word, it made America look weak in the process. To quote from Assad, or We Burn the Country, Putin was hosting a summit for the G20, a forum for the world's top economic powers. France's Fabius went through all the evidence that he said implicated Bashar personally in the chemical weapons attack. Russia's Lavrov's gestured with his hand to pause the conversation. He looked Fabius and the others directly in the eyes and smiled. "You have made your arguments, and I have made mine," said Lavrov calmly. "We could continue like this for a while, but Laurent, did you see that glass of fruit juice on the table in front of you? You see it orange. It was. But you know what? I see it blue. You can give me all the arguments in the world, but I will continue to say it was blue." Putin saw Obama flinch over Syria, and he saw this as a chance to showcase a strong, emboldened Russia. That was 2013. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. France's foreign prime minister, Fabius, was convinced Putin's bold move in Ukraine was the result of the observation of how Obama responded to Bashar's use of chemical weapons in Syria. Russia and Syria have been pals ever since, with Syria being one of the only 6 countries not to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Then came Donald Trump. I don't think it's a coincidence that Russia's expansions happened before Trump and after Trump, but not during his presidency. And I'm not alone in that regard. This poll indicates 62% of voters say Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine if Trump were president. I don't think, left or right, anyone would really disagree with me when I say Trump was unpredictable. While Trump's capricious nature may not have been great for running a country, it made his threats more plausible. Check this 2018 tweet from Trump. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated the nuclear button is on his desk at all time. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I have a nuclear button too, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. Instead of sheepishly walking away from Korea's threats, he doubles down and even mocks the leader. You have to keep your enemies guessing. Is Trump crazy enough to launch a nuclear weapon against Korea? I don't know, but I wouldn't want to find out. So where does Sleepy Joe fit into all of this now that he's president? To his credit, he's been quite tough on both China and Russia.
Taiwan makes their own judgments about their independence. We are not moving, we're not encouraging their being independent. That's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
Biden is drawing up similar red lines to his pal Obama. The question is, would Biden follow through on those red lines? It's hard to know, and I think that's the point. While Trump's unpredictability stemmed from his uncouth, capricious nature, Biden's comes from the fact that he's pretty senile, and he comes out with these aggressive statements that seem to contradict the overall White House's opinion. Aggressive stances are an important and delicate balance, because you have to actually be willing to follow up with them. I think what founding father Alexander Hamilton said about law can also be said about red lines and aggressive stances. If there be no penalty annexed to disobedience, the resolutions or commands which pretend to be laws will, in fact, amount to nothing more than advice or recommendations.